Okay, so let's go. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me? Yes? Sure. Please let me know if at any point you can't hear me anymore. Can you guys understand my accent? Thank God. Great. So, first of all, I hope you all had the opportunity to read um, the text I wrote. I'm very sorry I found some grammar mistakes, but I didn't have time enough for reviewing it. But you guys, you know, it's my second language. It happens sometimes. So there is a place here in Zoom where you can share emoji, and there's an option that let you guys share yes or no. Do all of you guys know how to find it? Yes or no? Yes, sure. So at some point, I may ask you guys some questions, and I may want to see whatever are you guys going to say. Okay, so let's go. I will put you guys in breakout rooms before we start to talk together. Today we will just discuss all the experiences I shared with you, all information shared with you. It will all be about that today. But before we do that, let's do that. Please let's go to breakout rooms so that you have the opportunity to share what are you celebrating and to share important feelings and thoughts you had about what you read. And we are doing this because, when we have more than 30 people together, maybe some of you don't have the opportunity to express something that is very important to you. So I want all of you to have the opportunity to talk to small groups. Okay? I think I'll have to stop sharing my screen to put you guys in breakout rooms. Just one second, one here. So, okay, let's go. We will go through four steps here. I want you guys to share general comments you have about the readings. Then we will go to a kind of question and answer. I will let you guys ask me anything you want about all the information and experiences I have reported. And then later in the end, we will talk about why do I found important to share this information with you. Okay, so first of all, do we have anyone here that wants to share some comments or thoughts or feelings about the demographics? I mean, have anyone here read the part about the demographics, how Brazil works, how things work in Brazil, how my country is? Any thoughts about that? Yes, please.
I think I raised my hand, but I wasn't trying to answer the question, but I could say something. So for the demographics, I think, I don't know, I hadn't really realized what the ethnic, the difference in like ethnicities were in Brazil. I think I'd never thought about it. I'd always assumed that it was just like South American people. I didn't realize that there was like such a huge distinction between um, a population of white people and black people, and then like a mix. I thought that was really interesting. And also, I didn't realize that the cost of living was like the difference, like the disparity between it was so great because the difference between politicians and congressmen in Brazil making money against people who were like earning minimum wage was very, very different. But yeah.
Absolutely. I think everyone talks about that here, and people would just love to hear you talking about that, like how unfair you found it. Um, I particularly let's see like this. You guys are in the United States. You guys are the insiders. of the United States, and I'm the outsider. And you guys are seeing Brazil as outsiders, and I am the insider. Let's say that, for example, all the time I have spent in the United States, I have always found kind of weird to not see a lot of people that are a mix between black and white, because in Brazil here it's so common, and maybe for you guys it may look kind of different, but for us it's kind of the opposite. And regarding the cost of living, it's just the same. It may sound uh, very surprising for you to learn about the cost of living in Brazil. But for a Brazilian, when these people go to the United States for a trip or for working or for living, they also have this feeling like here in Brazil, it's way cheaper than in the United States to buy food. But if you want to buy an iPhone, it will be double the price. If you want to buy a car in Brazil, it will be double the price of the United States. But if you want to do maintenance in your car or to buy insurance, it will be less than half of the price. And the list goes on, and the salaries are different. So it's all very different. So why does that matter? I think that maybe some of the things I was reporting in the other texts, these things wouldn't make as much sense if you didn't know about that. If you didn't know, for example, that probably the funding for the schools is completely different than in the United States. And maybe this makes some schools don't have an easy access to dozens or hundreds of instruments as you may have in some schools in the United States. And this may affect the way how things work. I have another question. Have any of you guys had the opportunity to see the samples of music in Brazil? And do you have any thoughts about that?
I'm really glad that you shared all the YouTube video links for the different genres of music, just because I feel like it's really a cool way to look into a different culture through their music. My personal favorite were the bossa nova pieces, but I really, really enjoyed every single piece of music that you shared with us. So thank you.
Absolutely. So one of the reasons I wanted to share that, I really believe that most of you guys like Brazilian music and know Brazilian music, but the first thing that comes to your head is the music of Antonio Carlos Jobim. So maybe when we talk about Brazil, you guys have a picture of Brazil like you are in Rio, drinking something really tasty in Copacabana Beach while someone is playing bossa nova, probably a Jobim tune, and everyone is listening to Jobim music. And this is not actually what happens here. People don't listen to that music. Just as I found in the United States, people listen to commercial music and popular music in general, and whatever plays in radio. And these are the styles that play in radio. And yes, you have people that listen to bossa nova and to listen to sophisticated music. Let's say like this: it's kind of racist using the term sophisticated music, but anyway. But it's not most of the population, and I would say that probably the most educated people that went to college or master's degree and have a lot of money and way more money than most of the population, these are the ones who probably listen to bossa nova. And if you just take a subway in Brazil, like in the rush hour, and start asking people what they listen to, like 90% of the people will say it's radio music. Um, People with no money will say it's radio music. People with a lot of money will say it's radio music because, it's the way how things work anywhere. Let me pick one more question here. Actually, I want one of you guys to pick one of the subjects, and share with me what stood out for you. Any thoughts?
Adolfo, when you say one of the subjects, do you mean like one of the questions?
Yes, one of the subjects you see here in the screen.
I definitely thought. Oh, go ahead, Stormy. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say that I found it interesting how little or no education was needed to teach music. Like it didn't matter who taught it or if it was taught. I thought that just stood out to me.
And I was just gonna say that I also saw that things cost way different amounts. Like things that I thought would be less expensive were more expensive, and things that thought would be more expensive were less expensive. You said something about that already, but that was a big thing for me when I read it.
Yes. So I want to go to Stormy's comment first. I found that just shocking to learn that in the United States people could learn music up to the high school, and that you guys had jazz ensembles in some schools that you guys could be playing in big bands. I interviewed Mark Taylor, who is one of the most prominent jazz arrangers. Some of you may have played arrangements arranged by Mark Taylor. I interviewed him in an online course I was teaching here in Brazil, and I asked him how schools work in Brazil, and the students were all online with me. And Mark just said, you have some schools that will have two, three, or even four jazz ensembles, and probably many schools will have marching bands. And all the students were like, what? What are you meaning? So this is the way music education works there. And Mark was just saying like, it's not perfect, but it's kind of like the way it works. So maybe you guys there in Brazil have something way better. And I was just finding it very funny because what actually happens is we have borders. We have kind of a cultural, virtual, invisible border, and you guys in the United States have actually no idea about what is going in Brazil. And we guys in Brazil have no idea about what is going in the United States. Actually, I do have an idea because I lived in the United States, but many people don't. Almost no one knows what's going in the United States. So let's think about we are in the 20th 21st century, and we live in a very globalist world, and we all have access to the internet. Even very poor people may access the internet. Kind of, it was supposed that it shouldn't be that hard for you guys in the United States to know what is going on in other countries or in Brazil. And for we in Brazil, it was supposed to not be that hard to know what's going in the United States. So I just found particularly interesting that no one cares about whatever is happening in other countries. So this is why one of my questions was about an universal view about music education. What I was talking about is that if you are an American student that studied all the time in schools in the United States in the public system, this is your concept about how music education is. And this may be your concept about how music education is in the globe. This is not the American music education. This is music education. And for we in Brazil, if you attended a school in Brazil and you had just the basics up to K to 5, and then you had no more music education, your understanding about what music education is what you lived, is what you saw, is what you experienced. So I just find that as future educators, when you start teaching in schools in the United States, you really may want to know that this is how things work in the American culture. but not necessarily this is a worldwide global concept of what music education is, because it depends very much about where you are. And you may want to know that, because when you know that, maybe you have a different eye about what you have in your hands. So regarding what Gage said, yes, the cost of living is different, and sometimes things that you just expect to be cheap, they will be way more expensive, and the salaries will be lower here. And things that you expected to be very cheap will be expensive, and things that are supposed to be expensive will be cheap. Anyway, here in Brazil, you may go to college for free. You may have universal health care. But as I said before, if you want to buy an iPhone or a car, you will have to work a lot. So let's move to the next part. I would like to know, and this is kind of something we will do in addition to what we were doing before. I would like to know if you guys, since I am a Brazilian, I have been there. Actually, I am here, not there. I am in Brazil right now. If you have questions about any of the situations or the informations you read about, or any of those topics, or anything that goes to your head, because we may not have any other opportunities to talk about that in the future. So, anyone? Yes.
I have a quick question. This is kind of it's related to this class, but also you're in my jazz pedagogy class also, and I'm wondering whether your experience in America or in these classes that are in American schools, if the jazz class and just like in general what we talk about there is more or less similar to your experience in Brazil than, say, the music education classes, like this intro to music ed class or like wind ensemble stuff like that. Is the jazz closer or is the regular like wind ensemble orchestra closer?
So, first of all, we don't have jazz ensembles in public schools in Brazil. This doesn't exist. Secondly, I don't believe anyone will be teaching jazz in a school in Brazil. They may be teaching some classical music or Brazilian music, but I really don't believe people will be teaching jazz. I actually don't believe that most of the population in Brazil has ever heard jazz in their lives. And the ones that say that love jazz, many times I ask them, which artist do you like? And they can't say the name of even one. So, for example, when I was teaching my online class in Brazil, I had several applicants from the top Latin American universities that wanted to attend this course. And one of my questions was, name 10 jazz artists, name 10 jazz albums, and name 10 jazz songs. And I had like one or two people that could name 10 jazz albums. I had like maybe 5 to 10 people that could name 10 jazz songs. And I had like 20 people who could name jazz artists. I had like 70 applicants. And these were musicians from top universities wanting to pursue an online intensive course in jazz. So, what about people that don't even listen to instrumental music or to sophisticated music? What about music educators that may have never get in touch with music appreciation classes or music history classes? What about the kids? So I don't believe jazz happens at all in public schools in Brazil. You may find jazz in colleges and conservatories. Then, yes, there will be jazz. Regarding ensembles, most of the public schools in Brazil, or even the private schools, won't have any ensemble. Some of these schools may have like a marching band, but it will be something extracurricular and independent from the music class. So this is the scenario for the schools. In colleges and conservatories, you don't have a jazz program. You have a popular music program. And the popular music program is very generalistic. It will cover several different genres of popular music, including jazz, but probably it will focus more in Brazilian music. And I may share my particular opinion. My opinion is that when we speak commercially, it's great for these students to have a wide view about several different genres, such as Brazilian music, blues, rock, and jazz. But when we talk about getting into an expert level of playing, I don't think it works because you end up just having a superficial understanding of each of the styles you were learning. Talking about jazz, for example, I can say that probably 90% of the popular music professors here in Brazil won't ever teach a student what a bebop scale is because it's kind of a very specific concept for the wide way of teaching popular music in Brazil. Any other questions?
I was just kind of curious because Brazil is just a really large country. Like from north to south and stuff is since it's so, I guess, tall. How consistent is the music education? Is it generally the same in most areas of the country, or is it regionally different?
Yes, I like the analogy you were doing. Like Brazil is tall and the United States is fat. So the United States is large that way and Brazil is large this way. Yes, Brazil is just as large as the United States and it's a very diverse country. There are different cultures in different places. But the United States have its policies very much based in states. So each state may have different policies, and in Brazil it's different. We have a national policy. So when policies are defined for music education or for education in general, these policies will work for every state and every place in Brazil. So kind of all the places follow the same policies, but some schools will be managed by the state government and some schools will be managed by the city government. So you may have different situations happening in one city and in another, and you may have different situations happening in one state and in another. So the policies for the music education are kind of flexible, but there's kind of a minimum that you must follow. So many places will follow just the very minimum. They will just offer some music, and some colleges will offer music up to K to 5, and some places may be offering music to up to K to 8, and some places may be offering K to 3. So it depends. You may have very different pictures going on, but I would say that the most common situation would be you having music from K to 5. I would say that the most relevant difference you may find in different regions is that we have kind of regional subgenres that happen only in a place or in another. So you may find really interesting to research about Brazilian northeastern music, northeastern regional music. It's kind of very different and very cool. So I'm very sure that schools in the northeast of Brazil, they will focus more in their local music while schools in Rio may focus in their local music, probably samba and bossa nova. The schools in the south of Brazil may focus in their local music that is kind of very similar to Southern South America music. And probably, I don't know, São Paulo is kind of more global. It may have a more generalistic view about music. But when I say that, I want to remind you guys one more time that we are talking about a music education that is made for small children. So what you will find in most of cases is actually music for kids, like Yankee Doodle, for example, the kids playing Yankee Doodle in the recorder, or things like this, or the kids playing Jingle Bells. You know, you guys have a lot of songs in your culture that are not popular here, but this will be kind of the level that you would see. In one of the stories I shared with you, I said that I was interning in a seventh grade class in a private school in Santos, one of the top 10 quality of life cities in Brazil. And this school was very proud to be a kind of artsy school, a kind of school that supported arts more than the others. And the kids in the seventh grade, they were learning how to play Jingle Bells and Happy Birthday to You in the recorder. So when you guys talk about how is jazz in schools or what's the repertoire, I would strongly recommend you guys to consider that all that you will find is something very much based in young kids. And even when music education is offered to older kids, there is not a specific program created for them. So probably they will just share the program created to younger kids. Let's move on. Let's move on. This class is very short. I guess there's some message in the chat. Yes, Twinkle Twinkle is very popular here as well. So this is the most important point for me, and I think some of you guys realized that, and some of you guys didn't realize that. We're not here actually to discuss how great or how bad Brazil is, or who is the best, Brazil or America. You know, it's not about it. It's about you guys have been immersed in American culture for all your life. And this is kind of probably 90% or 90% of what you know about how the world is. So when we talk about music education, you guys always talk about what you have seen, what you have experienced, what you expected to be in an American school. But music education may take different forms anywhere. It will be something in the United States, it will be something in South America, it will be something in Africa, it will be different in Europe, it will be different in Asia. So one question for you. Do you have any thoughts about how different is the curriculum for teaching music in public schools in Brazil and in the United States? I mean, how long it goes, for how many grades it covers, and what is taught, and what's the format and style of music education. Any thoughts you want to share about that? I have actually found some very interesting answers in Canvas, and I very much encourage you guys to share your thoughts.
I guess the difference in curriculum is kind of how you explain it, where when you were experiencing the seventh graders, they were, learning things that we might have, been learning back in elementary school. So I think there's maybe just like a bit of a learning curve in terms of what's available to the students and like what resources they have to be able to actually, be in line with what other countries are. And I think it is fully dependent on like how much, those programs are funded. And that kind of like allows, the teacher to have those resources to, provide a more rigorous curriculum or vice versa.
Yeah, so based on that, I mean, I understand. I assume you're saying that The learning curve in the United States for music education is probably faster, and Brazil is lower, and this may be something that may be affected by funding in the schools or by public policies or by the way how professors learn in college. But I would say that I really think funding is very important because why would you ever learn in college how to teach an ensemble if when you go to the school to teach, there will be no ensemble instruments there? There will be no trombone, there will be no trumpet. Why would you ever learn how to play these instruments and how to teach these instruments? When I attended a music education college in Brazil, the instrument classes we had available for us were nylon guitar, keyboard, singing, percussion, and recorder, and that was all. Why those instruments? The nylon guitar and the keyboard are instruments that don't work well for ensemble, so these are being taught just in case you want to teach students to sing, so you will be competent for them. Singing, of course, is for teaching the students to sing, and percussion is for percussion instruments for the kids, and the recorder is for actually teaching the recorder. So it's very likely that in most classes in music education in Brazil, the instruments that a kid may learn will be percussion, singing, and recorder. And there is no reason on teaching anything else in college if if the other instruments won't be available in schools and there will be no money for buying it. So I have another question for you, and this was kind of a question that Dr. Fiorentino has found particularly interesting. What you have found about the ways to learn an instrument in Brazil and in the United States? The different ways where you may have the opportunity to learn an instrument or to learn how to play or to learn music while being a performer in Brazil and in the United States. I may answer that, but I want to see and hear your answers.
Adolfo, could you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, you want to have the experience of playing an instrument. How is that different in Brazil and in the United States? How are the opportunities for learning how to play an instrument and to be actively engaged in music? How these opportunities are different?
It seems like in the United States, you'd have more opportunities through school, and in Brazil, you would have to go outside of school to seek the opportunity a little more. At least that's what I'm getting from what we read.
Absolutely. That's the point. Yes, Lindsay, please go.
Mine was just kind of along the same line as Gage's, but I think it must be really hard to even understand what all the instruments are, even if you've heard them before, just because you don't see them at school. So I feel like that would be hard to pick one that you would want to play, even if it wasn't like the recorder or one of the percussion instruments that may have been available that you've seen before.
I agree with you, but I have one more point to add. What if you don't have money for affording private lessons and learning whatever instrument you want to learn? Then your only option is going to public offerings of music courses, such as the pro bono workshops or the conservatories. We don't have a lot of conservatories here. I live in São Paulo. We have approximately 10 million people living here. I think it's way more than that. And we have like two public conservatories in São Paulo. So these are the options for learning music as you don't have it in the school. Or you may go to the pro bono workshops, but the level of teaching will be sometimes high, and the level of teaching won't be always high because these kids haven't been exposed to certain experiences they were supposed to be exposed before they get in touch with these instruments, because the size of the classes may be too big. So there are problems also in these offerings, but I'm actually very grateful that this happens. And I'm actually very grateful that we have conservatories in Brazil. And some music educators in Brazil support the conservatories, but others find that the conservatories in Brazil must end because they find the conservatories are oppressive because they teach Western European music instead of popular Brazilian music. So there's a discussion about that, and it's a good discussion. And I do think the conservatories should be teaching always Brazilian music and European music and jazz and a lot of other stuff. But I do believe that the solution is not ending the conservatories, is not finishing and closing the conservatories, because these are kind of our oases. These are kind of our best options for letting someone learn music, but really learning music, playing a real instrument, and going up to an advanced level. If this person can't afford private lessons, or if this person doesn't want to go to college and become a professional. So the conservatories are important as well. There are sort of many options, but all of these options don't have many positions available. As a professor in a conservatory in 2018, before I moved to the United States, I had about 5 spots or 8 spots for students to learn with me popular piano, and I interviewed about 160 people who were competing for these 8 spots. So, thank God the conservatory exists, but it will be great if we could have way more places and opportunities for people. So we won't have a lot of time here, but I want to go over one more topic. I want you to share if your perception about music education has changed after you read or after you read what I shared with you. And these are some points I have in the screen that are the ones that I find more interesting you to share. So, how has your perception about music education changed about reading what I sent to you?
I saw your
me-
mouth move,
Sorry.
but you were muted, Aldolfo. Something I was thinking about was that I don't know. I'm very much about like the change, like the big revolutionizing of music education, and really just breaking the mold and going for it. But it does instill this kind of like reminder that we are very privileged here in being able to have this instruction, and that like we should still like break the mold, and we should still incorporate like communities into music making, and into music education, but still like that kind of respect of like, okay, yeah, like we have a starting point, and that's extremely privileged and wonderful, was something that was nice to have, like just kind of a like, oh right, yeah. It didn't really change my perspective, but just reminded me of where I'm coming from.
Yes, I want someone else to share their perspectives as well, but I have a comment about that. It's not about talking which country is better to live, or where you will be happier, or where you will make more money as a music educator or as a lawyer. I don't know, you know, but it's not about that. It's about understanding how music education works differently in each place, and each place has a reason to make things be like this. But yes, I think you guys have actually a very good music education program and opportunity. And many, many times they read articles or I see people talking about how crap music education is in the United States. And I just wonder, compared to what? Are you comparing it to Finland or Norway or UK? So maybe, but are you comparing that to what probably 80 or 90% of the people in the world has in hand? Yes, you guys should always be looking for improving it, but you know, I wish so much that we could have the same you guys have in the United States. And I feel the difference when I go see professional musicians playing. And maybe the reason why the average professional musician in Brazil can't play the way as the average music professional in an average city in the United States plays is because we didn't have the same opportunities here. I want to share one more situation, and I know we're out of time, but this is very important. We had a discussion in the jazz pedagogy class about schools that don't offer jazz or schools that offer jazz ensembles just for fun. And how bad is that, and how absurd it is, and how much this has to change. Because these schools only have marching band, or they have the marching band, and the jazz ensemble is just a small part of the program. And some of the jazz students said, I felt really bad that I didn't have as much jazz ensemble or that the jazz ensemble was not that important. I just feel like you should feel lucky that you have a jazz ensemble at all, or you should feel lucky that at least you had marching band up to the high school, or that you had some ensemble opportunity instead of feeling like, oh my God, yes, we did, we had only 30 minutes of jazz ensemble a week, so it was not that great. But we had that in the high school. We don't have that in Brazil. In Brazil, you would only be playing the recorder and singing, and that would be all. And you would have to find private lessons and find a conservatory if you get a spot there. Any other comment before we close the class? The last one?
Sure, I'll go. I just feel about that. Like, I used to look upwards and say, hey, we're not as good as these people. Like I said in my comments, that I would look at the UK and say, oh, we don't have enough music education here. They do it in every grade of their school and they continue it. And I think if more people looked downwards and said, oh, we have so much more than this, then a lot more people would feel grateful about what they had. And I just think that that's important to note.
This is kind of a human bias. Most of people will always look downward. Most of people will always have a pessimistic view. So when you are only immersed in your own culture and situation, you will always be complaining about the problems you have. But when you have the opportunity to be exposed to other cultures, and that's why maybe some of you would like to consider a study abroad opportunity or interning anywhere else, you will see it upwards and downwards. You will have a perspective about how things work in other places, and you have a more fair perspective about what is happening in your place. Hey guys, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for reading my text. That's all for today. I will be here if any of you guys have one more question or comments, but feel free to leave. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.